Welcome to this explainer. We are jumping right into a truly fascinating historical travelogue today, commonly known as the Book of Acts. Whether you're a dedicated history buff or just someone who's kind of curious about how massive global movements begin, we've got an incredible journey ahead of us.
So, think about this for a second because it's a massive question. How did a tiny, seemingly insignificant movement starting in Jerusalem manage to reach the absolute heart of the Roman Empire in just 28 years? What we're looking at here is the foundational document of a movement that completely altered global history, and we're going to break down exactly how that happened.
Here's our roadmap for unpacking this ancient text today. 1. The physician's historical record. 2. The explosion in Jerusalem. 3. The witness spreads outward. 4. Paul's missionary tours. And finally, 5. Trials, shipwrecks, and Rome.
First up, the physician's historical record. Before we get into the actual narrative, we really need to establish just how credible and massive the scale of our source document is. The Greek title is Praxis Apostoloen, which translates to Acts of Apostles, and this represents a comprehensive continuation of the gospel written by Luke. It was penned by Luke himself, a guy the Apostle Paul literally called the beloved physician. And what makes this so incredibly compelling is that Luke wasn't some distant historian writing centuries later. He was an eyewitness. He was a direct traveling companion for a lot of these very events.
28. That number is it's staggering when you really think about it. This entire sweeping narrative covers a very precise, incredibly fast-paced period of just 28 years, stretching from 33 to about 61 CE. It is a highly condensed time frame for such a massive historical shift.
And the scope of this record is wild. This wasn't some vague philosophical text. Written in Rome, Luke meticulously named around 100 specific individuals. And on top of that, he pinpointed roughly 100 precise geographic regions, cities, and islands all around the Mediterranean Sea. The level of granular detail he provides is just off the charts.
And here's where it gets really cool, because modern archaeology is literally digging up proof of his accuracy. If you compare Luke's specific Greek terminology with recent archaeological discoveries, they match up perfectly. We've unearthed inscriptions confirming Luke's exact political titles. For instance, he correctly used the specific term for city rulers for local officials in Thessalonica, and he accurately identified Gallio as the proconsul of Achaia. He wasn't guessing, he knew the local ancient bureaucracies inside and out.
Actually, excavators have even found the exact ancient theater in Ephesus, where a massive, chaotic riot went down against the Apostle Paul. They've also found Maltese inscriptions backing up his exact use of the title, the principal man of Malta. All of this proves we are dealing with a highly reliable, solidly historically grounded travelogue.
Moving on to Section 2, Explosion in Jerusalem. So where does this heavily documented story actually kick off? With an absolute explosion of growth right in Jerusalem. Following the outpouring of Holy Spirit at Pentecost in 33 CE, the Apostle Peter gets up and gives this powerful speech laying out scriptural evidence about Jesus. The response to that one single speech, 3,000 people are baptized in a single day. Just imagine the sheer logistical and social impact of 3,000 people joining a new movement overnight. Even by today's digital standards, that's a massive, immediate ripple effect that would disrupt any city.
Now, obviously, you can't have that kind of explosive growth without ruffling some major feathers. It immediately triggered fierce opposition from the local Sanhedrin. The apostles were arrested, thrown in prison, and hauled before the religious leaders. But their momentum was so undeniable that a highly respected Pharisee named Gamaliel actually stood up and issued this famously pragmatic warning to his peers. He told them, "Do not be found fighters against God." He basically realized, hey, if this is just a human undertaking, it's going to fail naturally. But if it is from God, well, there's no way we're overthrowing it anyway.
Which brings us to Section 3, the witness spreads outward.
It's kind of like throwing a rock into a pond. The persecution in Jerusalem didn't crush the movement. It acted as a catalyst. You can literally track the momentum building geographically. In 33 CE, it starts in Jerusalem. Then, Philip pushes the message to Samaria. The next major phase reaches Antioch in Syria. A few years later, the witness pushes completely across the sea into Europe, specifically Macedonia and Greece, before finally making its way to the capital of Rome around 61 CE.
But listen, this wasn't just about covering miles on a map. They were shattering ancient, deeply entrenched cultural boundaries. Philip preaches to the Samaritans. Then, the fierce persecutor Saul has this incredibly dramatic conversion in Damascus. Peter receives a vision and reaches out to uncircumcised Gentiles, starting with a Roman army officer named Cornelius. And up in Syrian Antioch, the shift is so profound that the disciples are first called Christians. They were completely redefining who could even belong to this community.
All right, part 4, Paul's missionary tours. So the second half of the book shifts gears heavily toward the man we used to know as Saul, the Apostle Paul. From chapter 15 all the way through 21, the record is just dense, and the pace is relentless. It honestly reads like an action-adventure. Paul is traveling non-stop through regions like Galatia, Macedonia, and Achaia during his second and third missionary tours. The sheer amount of ground this guy covered, on foot and by sea, is just astounding.
And let's be clear, Paul's work was definitely not a peaceful lecture series. He was constantly operating in these high-stakes environments, facing intense pushback. I mean, he survived a literal stoning in Lystra, where the mob actually thought he was dead. He faced imprisonment in Philippi, and he had to navigate that massive, chaotic riot in the Ephesian theater we mentioned earlier.
Eventually, things come to a head, and Paul is arrested in Jerusalem. A conspiracy to kill him gets uncovered, so Roman soldiers secretly transfer him to Caesarea. While he's there, facing a completely biased trial that could easily lead to his execution, Paul uses his Roman citizenship to pull this brilliant legal maneuver. He boldly states, "I appeal to Caesar." It's a huge turning point, legally ensuring his path straight to the highest court in Rome.
That takes us right into our final section, part 5, Trials, Shipwrecks, and Rome.
That legendary appeal to Caesar kicks off the final, thrilling sequence of the book, and Luke writes this part with absolutely gripping, first-hand detail. We get to track Paul's incredible journey step by step. He leaves his imprisonment in Caesarea. Out on the Mediterranean, a massive, terrifying storm strikes their ship, tossing them around for days. This culminates in a dramatic shipwreck on the island of Malta. And finally, against all odds, they make their arrival in Rome. Even when they're literally stranded, washed ashore on Malta, the narrative does not slow down. It is packed with crazy details. Paul miraculously survives a venomous snakebite, completely stunning the local residents. Then he cures the father of Publius, the principal man of the island. They took a literal disaster and turned it into an opportunity to witness, before eventually catching another ship to Rome via Syracuse. It just firmly establishes this unstoppable momentum behind his mission.
And that brings us to the grand finale of this 28-chapter epic, right in the heart of Rome. Paul is under house arrest, sure, but he is far from silenced. He spends 2 full years preaching with absolute boldness to Jewish leaders and, well, anyone who would come visit him. The message made it from that one small group in Jerusalem all the way to the capital of the empire.
So here's what I want you to think about as we wrap up today. If a meticulous 28-year-old travelogue could document a tiny, heavily persecuted group completely reshaping an empire, what monumental ripples are starting in our world today that history hasn't even recorded yet? It just goes to show you how small beginnings, when driven by incredible conviction, can literally rewrite the map of the world. Thank you for joining me for this explainer. I really hope you found this breakdown as fascinating as I did.